Welcome to Revelation Unraveled. I'm your host, William Tapley, also known as the third eagle of the apocalypse and the co-prophet of the end times. On today's program, I would like to talk about, in the book of Revelation, the whore of Babylon. It is critical that we understand just exactly who the whore of Babylon represents, because St. John writes more about the fall of Babylon than any other person, place, or event in the entire book of Revelation. Remember, Satan does not want you to know who the whore of Babylon actually is. There are many, many false prophets out there who are trying to tell you that the whore of Babylon represents the Roman Catholic Church. That is a lie from the pit of hell. I'm here today to tell you that the whore of Babylon is our own decadent Western civilization, particularly America and England. In order to determine exactly who Babylon is, let's look at her 12 characteristics as described by St. John in the book of Revelation. First of all, let's look at her 3 locations. Geographically, Babylon is located on many waters, peoples, nations, and tongues. Now that could be the Catholic Church, because the Church is a universal religion. But that word waters is better for capitalism, because most nations in capitalism are heavily involved in trading, especially by ship. The United States and England are both almost totally surrounded by water. Let's look at her spiritual location. Spiritually, St. John says that Babylon is located in a desert, along with the beast that she rides, the scarlet beast of communism. In other words, her geopolitical location is that she rides on top of communism, or capitalism controls communism. That is what the symbolism of the beast of Babylon riding the beast. Now, the false prophets say that since the beast has 7 heads, which stand for 7 hills, then Babylon must be the Roman Catholic Church, because the 7 hills represent Rome. It's true, the 7 hills represent Rome, but remember, the 7 hills belong to the beast, not to the whore of Babylon who rides atop the beast. That's because the capital of the Scarlet Beast will eventually move from Moscow to Rome and eventually to Jerusalem under the leadership of the Antichrist. Let's look at the clothing that Babylon wears. Babylon wears purple and scarlet. Now, the false prophets like to tell you that since the Catholic Church, the bishops and cardinals wear purple and scarlet, therefore Babylon must be the Catholic Church. The fact is that the purple symbolizes royalty, and therefore the monarchy of England, and the scarlet color represents bloodshed, the bloody American Revolution. Again, the purple and scarlet symbolize England and America. Let's look at the name on Babylon's forehead. St. John calls her Mystery Babylon because he does not recognize the name on her forehead. Now, if the name were Rome or Catholic, he would most certainly recognize that name. But if the name were Capitalism or the United States, he would not recognize that name. That's why Babylon cannot be the Catholic Church, because St. John would recognize either the name of Rome or Catholic. Let's look at the golden cup filled with filth and fornication. The false prophets will tell you that that is the chalice used by priests at a mass. This is a lie from the pit of hell. The golden chalice represents the beautiful exterior of our culture, which is decadent on the inside. Just take a look at Hollywood movies. They are very slick and professional looking on the outside, but on the inside they promote pornography, abortion, homosexuality, and every other kind of filth and fornication. Let's take a look at the 28 items of merchandise that Babylon imports. Now, don't try and tell me that the Vatican imports 28 different kinds of merchandise, including automobiles and oil, which St. John mentions, by the way. He does not use the term automobile, he uses the term chariot. The United States imports probably 1,000 times as much of every one of those 28 items than the Vatican does. That's because St. John is making it clear that this is a commercial entity, not a religious entity. When Babylon is burned with fire, the merchants of the earth weep and moan. Again, is it serious to think that if Vatican were burned with fire, if there was a nuclear attack on the Vatican, do you think the merchants of the world would weep and moan? I don't think so. But they would certainly miss the United States when we are hit by a nuclear attack. As St. John says, the merchants got rich because of her prices. And everyone knows the United States is the biggest importer of goods in the world. Now the false prophets will tell you that since Babylon is a city, it cannot represent a country or a group of countries. But St. John has already used a country to symbolize a city, and that is Jerusalem. He calls Jerusalem Sodom and Egypt. In other words, countries. The false prophets will tell you that a whore can only be a religion. But that's not true, because if you look at the Old Testament, the nation of Israel was called a whore. Whenever a country loses its foundation, its religious foundation, its relationship with God, as the United States has, when we lose our Christian heritage, then we have become the harlot Babylon, as described in the book of Revelation. When St. John says Babylon is fallen, those two is fallens refer to England and the United States. When he says render to her double, that word double again refers to the two countries. When he says woe, woe, that great city, those two woes again indicate England and the United States. St. John lists the sins of decadent Western capitalism. They are abortion, greed, and occultism. Now, we may think it's nonsense, things like tarot cards or Ouija boards or horoscopes and that kind of thing. But God looks on those things much more seriously. He considers that an affront to His Majesty. Please don't get involved with Ouija boards, tarot cards, and that kind of blasphemy. The second sin I mentioned was greed. That's both personal greed and corporate greed. Don't buy things that are made by slave labor. I know I don't follow that rule myself as I should. And of course, the third crime is abortion. This is probably our worst crime. 50 million dead aborted babies do not speak well for America. St. John says that those victims of abortion are in heaven right now, but they are not praying for Babylon. In other words, they are not praying for America. They are praying for vengeance on America. And God says He will grant them vengeance. This should give us all pause to think. And what are the innocent victims of Babylon? Those innocent victims St. John lists as prophets, saints, servants, and martyrs. Those are not just any group. Those are the four groups who will reign with Christ during the millennium. We have cut their lives short. That's why they pray for vengeance. Don't listen to the false prophets who say that the Catholic Church is the whore of Babylon, because if you believe that, you won't know who to go out from. It is our own decadent Western capitalism that you must go out from. Satan does not want you to know the truth. You must go out from her if you want to avoid the plagues that St. John says will be visited upon Babylon. Now, if you would like more information, simply write to the address you see on your screen.